It's that time of year. It's the space game. Can UCF pull off a Space Jam versus Houston?
You are Locked On UCF, your daily podcast on the UCF Knights, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome on in to Locked On UCF, your daily UCF podcast. I'm your host, Mike G. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of every single day. Turn us on, turn us up, we'll turn it out. I'm here with my good friend Andrew Gluco, senior writer at UCFKnightZone.com to talk a little UCF football here on a Monday afternoon. Andrew, the space game is up next. We're going to break down the space game and what this game could mean. One more step toward bowl eligibility for the Knights. Could they take the step? They've never lost one. Will it be this Saturday? I don't think so, but we'll see. Can Taven Jackson bounce back? And then, again, we're going to talk about that race to a bowl game. Let's start at the top here. Houston is up next for the UCF Knights, my friend. Let me tell you, it was a disappointing showing versus Baylor. It was a really disappointing showing versus Baylor. But I think this is a great opportunity for them to bounce back versus a quality team. Scott Frost still looking for that quality win on the schedule right now. Houston 7-2 overall, 4-2 in conference. Talk to me about Houston, man, and where the Knights stand going up against the Cougars here. They sit fourth in the conference in the Big 12, and this I think would qualify as a signature win for Scott Frost.
Well, they're 7-2, so I mean, obviously they've had a decent year. The truth is, they haven't played a whole lot of teams that are really good. In fact, the best thing they played was Texas Tech. They lost. But they're coming off a game where they just kind of wet the bed against West Virginia, and they're going to be playing kind of angry. And I was talking to some UCF people, and I basically said, like, I wish Houston won last week. The last thing you want to do is make them angry coming into this game. But statistically, Houston is not a world beater. They really aren't. This is a game that UCF can surprise in. One, space games, weird things happen. Two, it's at home. This is a different team at home than they are on the road. But I mean, they got some work to do to right the ship. I mean, basically, so many things went wrong against Baylor. You had on the defensive side, they had the worst outing of the year. They looked lost. There was a lack of energy in the first half. Second half, they tightened it up. They did a pretty good job. They held Baylor in check. I believe it was about 111 yards of offense in the second half. And they didn't do a whole lot. The Bears did, but I mean, the first half, Sawyer Robertson did exactly what they thought he was going to do, and they carved him apart. And the players just looked lost. On the offensive side, there seemed to be a massive game plan problem here. For having an extra week, they were woefully unprepared and came out with some really head scratchers. I mean, Connor Meadows, who's a backup lineman who also sometimes doubles it as a tight end, got absolutely torched on a 3rd and short. And then they tried passing the ball, but he has no vertical. He couldn't reach up and get the ball. So I mean, it was like just a couple head scratches. Like, why is he rolling out for a pass in this situation? You want your surest hands in the game here, and it's just like, what? And UCF 0-6, 0-7, they took a while to get their first third down conversion. I mean, this was a team that just could not do anything right on offense.
Yeah, look,
head scratcher.
Yeah, it was definitely a head scratcher, I think. The Jekyll and Hyde, when you're rebuilding, it's tough. It really is tough because you're going to have ups and downs in year one. I think that's to be expected here. But, there are opportunities. What I like is there are opportunities on this schedule to bounce back and show that, hey, this is maybe not the rule and the exception. And we can, have a good showing. It wasn't that they lost to Baylor. It was how they lost to Baylor, I think, that was most disappointing to me, right? Very little fight offensively. Not a lot worked. The play calling looked kind of unimaginative. And if you're Scott Frost, you've got to figure out a way to motivate your team to bounce back here quickly here, because don't have much of a stomach for this team missing a bowl game. I just don't. They've got to make a bowl game, Andrew. Again, we're going to talk about that in the last segment. But when I'm looking at this UCF team, I'm looking at a team that has Houston, as I mentioned, fourth in the Big 12 right now, Texas Tech and BYU down the stretch. Now, I think they should be able to get Oklahoma fairly comfortably unless they lay an egg. Right now, so far, I would say they've won the games they're supposed to win so far this year. Can we agree on that? Like, the ones that were just hanging out there that were like, it was like, yeah, you have to win this game. You should win this game. And they won it. The
Mhm.
next three of these next four are tweeners where I can't. Oklahoma State is the only game left on the schedule where I would say slam dunk win. That gets them to 5. But they have to pull an upset here, what would largely be considered an upset to make a bowl game. And they've got 3 chances to pull an upset. Interestingly enough, the ESPN matchup predictor giving UCF a 60.4% chance to win this game versus Houston. You think
It
that's
helps being
about
at home.
it does, but it's also only a 1.5 point spread. It opened at 2.5, and the over-under is at 47.5 points. What do you think about this being a 1.5 point spread?
Well, I'll be honest. I don't think UCF should be favored at all. I mean, they last week with against Baylor were such a bad showing, and this spread being the way it is more of an insult to Houston than it is a prop to UCF. As I said before, Houston has a great record, but they haven't really beaten teams of real merit. I mean, we talked about it. They lost against Texas Tech. They had this weird game against West Virginia where they just got kind of fell flat on their face. They beat Arizona State, but Arizona State lost Sam Levitt, and that became a different team for the remainder of that game. Now, Jeff Sims stepped in over this weekend and had himself a game, but they were kind of reeling at that point. So basically, their signature win is that Arizona State game. That's their best game all year as far as opponent wise. They had that 1 week stint as a rank. They lost this past week, so they're angry. They're angry. UCF needs to figure themselves out, like big time. They struggled against Baylor in ways that we are a little surprised. Taven Jackson looked like a backup quarterback. They didn't run the ball all that much. I mean, Myles Montgomery had 12 carries, and the next closest was Taven Jackson, but some of those were due to quarterback sacks. Jay Nixon had 3 carries. This was a very disjointed running of plays. However, you get far behind early, you're going to abandon the run. But the thing was, the game was early enough. It was 14-0 the first quarter. It was early enough that UCF did not have to abandon the run like they did. They didn't really start utilizing all that much until later, and by then damage was already done. UCF was cooked. But everything that they did right earlier in the year, they did wrong in Waco. I wonder if someone spiked the Gatorade or something, but they looked so flat. It was like they were in a cloud and just in a haze and not thinking straight. I don't know what it is, man, but that was a tough one to stomach. I mean, nobody looked good in that game. It just, even a guy like Cole Kozlowski had a great game from the stat sheet standpoint. There were a couple plays where he just quit, where he was chasing, he was, falling behind. He stopped running. I'm like, dude, don't stop running. Because others feed off that. It's an energy thing. If you're showing lackadaisical energy, it's going to start creeping in the rest of this team. And it's really what happened. They looked lost. The energy wasn't there. And I think it just one thing led to another. They all just kind of start checking out. And that was frustrating.
Look, well, a big part of whether they'll be able to pull off another space game win will be the play of one Taven and Jackson. He went 18 for 33 for only 151 yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions versus Baylor. Rough day. We'll talk about how he can bounce back next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. College football is back, and we couldn't be more excited here at Locked On UCF. The tailgates, the rivalries, energy in the stands, just nothing like it. But let's be real, actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why we use the Game Time app here. It's the easiest way to score last minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. And what you see also is you see panoramic seat view, so you know exactly where you're sitting. And guess what? They have zone deals. Pick the section, Game Time picks the seats, and you save big. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. Andrew Taven Jackson, as I mentioned, 18 for 33. Not a lot of yards, 2 interceptions. Turning the ball over on the road is a big no-no. He's got to bounce back here. This team goes as quarterback goes, at least to some extent. The running backs didn't really have the day I thought they would have versus Baylor. Felt to me like there wasn't much of a commitment to the run, only 3.2 yards per carry. Myles Montgomery only 12 carries. Dayton Nixon only 3 carries. And Taven Jackson had 5 carries for 7 yards. I don't know, man. 33 throws to 23 runs felt like the wrong pass rush ratio for Baylor. Can they get it right here for Houston? Now, when you look at where this team ranks here, I mean, Houston is kind of a middling team. I mean, they've got a good record, but they're kind of a middling team, both offensively and defensively. I think this is a game that UCF can get if Taven Jackson can pull it together.
Well, I think part of it comes back to the script. You know, what's your game plan? And I think they need to have a degree of commitment to the run. You know, this is an area that, while the blocking has not been great, you have talented running backs. Your quarterbacks are a weak link in your skill positions. You know, you have good wide receivers, though. Marcus Burke being out, that hurt. They needed him. They needed a big guy. They didn't have him. However, you cannot abandon the run because they're just going to dare you to throw the ball. And sorry, Taven Jackson, he's a game manager. He's you know, if the everything is on his shoulders, you see what happens. You know, he barely passed for, was what, 55%. You know, 2 picks, and they weren't even good picks. I mean, one of them was thrown into double coverage. I mean, what do you expect was going to happen? You know, at that point, like you're just asking for a turnover, and then he was able to avoid some sacks, but then just struggled to complete passes. You know, I'm sorry, but like when your defense holds Sawyer Robertson to under 300 yards passing, you have a golden opportunity to do something, anything, and they did nothing. This was easily the worst. Well, from a point standpoint, it's the worst offensive output since they lost to USF in 2015 when they scored 3 points. So, I mean, it's been a while since they laid an offensive egg like this. There's no valid excuse. And a lot of this, I'm sorry, comes back to coaching. And I think the play calling wasn't great. It didn't evolve with the situation all that well. You put your quarterback in a situation where he was failing, and instead of changing it up to allow him to kind of hit the reset button, you just threw him back out there to throw more passes because the team kept getting further and further behind. Well, that obviously, let's do the same thing over and over again and see if a different result happens. You know, we all know what that's called. I'm sorry, Mike. There's so many things that have to be fixed. It's not just Taven Jackson's fault, but he did look like a backup quarterback. This was not the guy who stepped in earlier this year and made some magic. He looked
well. There, in fairness to him, I think you're right. There are a lot of things around him that also need to be fixed. But again, in a rebuild year, it's going to look pretty imperfect at times, and that's where you're at. I mean, look, the quarterback of the future, in my opinion, is Kane Archer. And having your trigger man allows you to build around him, more effectively. And I think
Mhm.
they have a chance to get there, though. You've got to suffer through these first years, though, where it looks painful and it's not good anywhere near a finished product here. A lot of this is fixed through time and recruiting. And if you're Scott Frost, you can't talk about that right now. You got to coach the guys you have now. But we can talk about that right now. We can say, hey, look, once they improve personnel in certain areas, this will look a lot better.
Yeah, and you make a very valid point. And this is one of the things that Scott Frost needs to answer to. He even said, we're going to work with what we have, the players that we have right now. We're going to work with that. Well, the setup and the execution that they did on Saturday did not reflect that. They weren't utilizing the players that they have. They were trying to do something different, and it wasn't working. They tried twice to do direct snaps to the running backs, and both of them hit the ground.
Yeah.
They failed twice. I could see we're trying to do something different. Well, maybe just try to get your fundamentals down first, before you start getting all razzle dazzly. Just run the ball, hand the ball off, and let them run it. Just do that right, and then you start getting a little fancy. But again, this comes back to work with the guys that you have. And I don't think they truly did that Saturday. They've done that in other games, but I think Saturday Baylor's not a good defense, and they made them look outstanding. That's the crazy part. Baylor's rush defense was awful, and they made them look like world beaters. So I mean, that comes back to offensive scheme. Like you obviously didn't do it right, but the fact that they had 2 weeks to do this, to put this together, is even worse. Like, come on, you this is what you got after 2 weeks. It's like, I think they slept for a week and a half.
Yeah. Look, I think there's an opportunity here versus Houston to show that it's not going to be a trend. No 2 bad games in a row. I don't know. Has UCF had 2 bad games in a row so far this year?
Well, I mean, you had Kansas State and Kansas, which they lost both.
Okay.
But, I mean, I wouldn't call both truly
Kansas
bad
State. Kansas State, I would say, was a bad game. Kansas, I would not say was a bad game. But I don't know if they've had 2 bad games in a row here.
Kansas, they should have won. That they had them on the ropes. They weren't able to put them away, and then they kind of just fell apart at the very end. Just couldn't knock it in at the goal line. Kansas State, I thought, was just a flat out. They flat out lost that game. Kansas State played a pretty good game, but Kansas, they left that one on the field, and that one I thought set up the hunger that led to the West Virginia game. But then all that momentum that came from that win just seemed to die out. Maybe the bye week was a bad idea. We've talked about it. We thought, hey, this is a perfect time to set yourself up for the home stretch. Well, maybe they just got hung over or something, because all that positive momentum is gone, completely vaporized within the first 5 minutes of the game. So I don't know. Maybe the bye week was a bad idea.
Well, they can't leave too many more on the table if they expect to make a bowl game, which is what we'll talk about last here. Will the Knights make it to 6-6 and go bowling? We'll talk about that next on Locked On UCF. This episode of Locked On UCF is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. I like to do this. It's lots of fun. I win some, I lose some, but I definitely have a fun time doing it. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. The race to a bowl game. Can UCF make a bowl game? As I mentioned, they need 2 more wins, which means there's going to be an upset here if UCF is going to win. I don't care what anybody says. Houston would be an upset. Oklahoma State would not, but certainly Texas Tech would be a massive upset for UCF, and so would BYU at this point. What does this look like down the stretch? I mean, the most realistic scenario is you beat Houston and Oklahoma State and you get to a bowl game. But if you lose Saturday, a space game somehow for the first time, you're going to have to pull off an upset a massive upset on the road versus either Texas Tech or BYU, which most people will not think is realistic. I think 5-7 is likely. 6-6 is possible. 7-5, highly unlikely. What say you, Andrew Gluco? Can the Knights get to 6-6? Can we meet in the middle here?
I mean, it's doable. It's certainly doable. Houston, they've played them in the space game for a lot of people don't realize Houston and UCF have a lot of history together in football, and they're always really good games, and they almost always went for UCF side. It's just a huge history there, dating back to 2005. I remember, I think it was homecoming 2005, and this was still in the old Citrus Bowl, and Art Briles comes out, the Houston head coach at the time, and talked about how loud the UCF fans were. And then, a few years later, they have a stop, fourth and goal with the game on the line to continue their magical 2013 season that ended up with a Fiesta Bowl win over the Baylor Bears. And then the following year, I think it was the quarterback for Houston, Ward, and his first name is escaping me for this very moment, fumbled it out of the end zone at the 1 yard line with like seconds on the clock as he was about to score. The ball got knocked out. And that's how UCF won the game. So, I mean, they've had some really close games. I mean, the reason why fans always put Cincinnati in front is because both teams were ranked higher. But as far as these close, like intense endings, UCF and Houston have quite a history.
Yeah,
I think we have to accept that fact that this could be a good game. UCF's first ever ranked win over a ranked opponent was Houston in 2009. I mean, so there's a lot of Houston history interwoven with UCF. So I mean, from setting the stage, UCF has a good chance to win this one. It's going to be closer than in years past, where I think the average win margin is like 32 points. And we talked about that in the post-game live show, where it was, the space games have never been particularly close. This might be different. This is probably the best team to play in a space game against UCF. I mean, you can make the case about Oklahoma State in 2023. They were in a good year, and they got curb stopped 45-3. And just the weirdest things happen at this game. So, I know fans are upset, and rightfully so. Give them another shot. If there's one game, look, I usually drive home after games. This game's going to go late. It's an 8:00 game. It's not going to be done till like 11:30. I'm not getting out of state until like 1-2 plus in the morning. I normally just drive home, which is 2.5, 3 hour drive. I thought about staying at a hotel, and then I looked, and they're all sold out. So I guess I'm driving my happy butt home after the game. So I want those rooms to be taken by fans. I want this place filled up, so that makes my long drive in the middle of the night worth something. But do I think they can win this game? Absolutely. Yes, I can. I do believe they can win this game. And the season's not over. And that's what the fans need to realize. The coaching staff needs to keep the players on track. The season's not over. They still have 4 games left. They're 4-4. Just wipe the slate. Start it over. You're 0-0 now. Go win 2 games. I think they can do it against Oklahoma State. I think they're going to be very hard pressed on those 2 roadies. They are not a good road team.
Yeah.
So this one against Houston, this may be now or never on a post game bowl. A bowl game.
Yeah, I would agree. It is definitely now or never here because, like I said, you can't leave too many more on the table here if you expect to get there. And realistically, very tough tests in Texas Tech and BYU. Not to say they can't pull a rabbit out of the hat, but it will be difficult. Andrew Gluco, senior writer at UCFKnightZone.com. I want to thank you for joining me today, guys, on today's show. Thank you so much for making Locked On UCF your first listen of every single day. We'll be back at you guys tomorrow with more Locked On UCF.